Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back and to see many of the colleagues and some new colleagues that I don't know. As Dr. Pavin said in the beginning, one of the outcomes of participating to the Guild is that we have decided to build together an extension concerning the outside in program, and it deals with my area of basic knowledge, which is essential oils. I'm a naturopathic physician, specialist in clinical aromatherapy. I've been working in Europe for 30 years, more or less. I have other specialties, herbal medicine. I am a homeopath, even though I do not use it as a mainstream. So I would like to get into why are essential oils important in regeneration, renewal, and longevity? Where's the catch? Well, the catch comes from Mother Nature. Mother Nature has always been regulated by the laws of life. And everything on this earth has been regulated by the laws of life, except in the last couple of thousand years, humans. Humans have started regulating their lives in a different way. And that is one of the main reasons why, as you have heard from Dr. Parvin, one of the main reasons why we are becoming a victim of aging. And we are victims of aging. Now, this is due to the fact that natural evolution is a process where Mother Nature, or vital energy forces, or however you want to put it, creates a process where we adapt. And this is very important. This is an important concept for the essential oils, because the humans in shamanic medicine and Native American, the two-legged, which are we have adapted more than we even believe, or more than we even are aware of. And we're going to find that out towards the end of my talk. Now, humans' adaptation means that it adapts to the environment, it adapts to the energies, it adapts to the food, and it adapts to survival processes. But our adaptation sometimes goes overboard. And we don't adapt to nature, but we adapt to human necessities, or we think they're necessities. And that's where we run into the problems of everything that Dr. Parvin talked about. Now, aromatherapy, in this case, is actually a two-sided coin. And it goes back, way back in time, before Christ, and it comes up to the present. But there are two different visions of aromatherapy that seem to have come into a certain type of conflict. One, in the past, and I'm just going to briefly say Avicenna, Ali ibn Sina, who lived from 1980 to 1037 AD, Avante Domini, wrote many books and on the properties of over 800 plants, and is also one of the is the person, not one, is the person who started distilling essential oils. We still use his method today to distill essential oils, but he did not talk science. He talked about observation and effects and art. There was an alchemic part, the transformation from distilling the essential oil, taking it out of the plant. There's there's an alchemy that comes in. Today, we look at the science. We look at the composition. Therefore, we're not interested in the energies. The alchemic part was interested in the energies. The energies of what? Let's start talking a little bit about the art. The energies of Mother Nature, the seasons, the 4 energy seasons. And this is important because the plants bring in this energy. And according to the type of energy that they bring in, and the energy of the season has to deal with the air, the wind, the light, the rain, the soil, the maturity of the plant, and so on, it will create a different type of essential oil according to the geographical parts where these plants are born, and it will create different, let me call them essential oil characters, where we can have rosemary with various representatives. They have different chemical specificities, and that's important. But a season follows another, at least it used to. There was a spring, and then a summer, and then an autumn, and then a winter. And that has to do with our energetical process to keep and maintain harmony and balance. And we were talking about that with Dr. Parvin before, so I don't have to go very deep into it. And you are all specialists on this because we all talk the same language. What we call yin and yang, for example, if we want to stay in the traditional Chinese medicine model, unfortunately, many people have the idea that they are oppositions, yin against yang, but they're not. They integrate each other. The sun is integrated by the moon. The light is integrated by the dark. This maintains harmony. And this is exactly what we've lost in our body. We do not maintain harmony anymore. And be it physical factors, we'll see them after, be it emotional factors, we'll talk about that a little bit after. This is where we do not reach a balance. And that's where our body begins to falter. This symbol is much more complicated and much more simple than we think, because the yin and the yang flow into one another. Let's remember the basic definition of yin and yang. The yang is the side of the mountain that is in the sun. The yin is the side of the mountain that's in the shade. But during the day, the part of the mountain that was in the sun becomes shaded. And the part of the mountain that was in the shade becomes sunny. And that's our life evolution of every single day. Dr. Parvin talked about birthdays. Okay. Native traditions talk about sunrise and sunfall. That is another version of a birthday. Every day we can renew ourselves. And every day, that's when we start going to sleep. And we follow nature's laws. And every day we get up and we nourish ourselves physically, mentally, and spiritually. So this is part of understanding why when we talk about essential oils, we're talking about something that nature has created. And we say for the plants, but not only, has created to keep this balance. Energy, the energies that the essential oils are subjected to create different species And different species have different characters called chemotypes, which have different properties, give our bodies different solutions. And you see, I'm not talking about healing. I'm talking about solutions, because essential oils do not heal. Essential oils, I'll talk about a little bit later, due to the secondary metabolites, do much more than healing. But it has a lot to do with the balance of our body. Essential oils are sensitive to when they are harvested, in what season they are harvested, and the weather conditions prior to their harvesting. So the air, the wind, the earth, the fire, the water are all elements that are important for growth. They're important for our bodies. And this is one of the reasons why we've gone way beyond living by nature. We do not have fresh water anymore. We have water which is, I say, contaminated with substances that make it available through aqueducts and no bacteria. Fire. We do not have the fire of the food we eat. The fire of the food, or the nutrition of the food of the earth, we don't have it anymore. Dr. Parvin talked about the apple. We can talk about any type of food. We can talk about anything that we eat. We can talk about the poverty of the soil, which represents the poverty of our life. We're our soil, and so on. I'm going to just go through this real fast because I want this to be part of an understanding of what I'm going to be saying after. Energy and life. The organism is energy sensitive. Our bodies are energy sensitive. We saw how our body is energy sensitive to light. We saw how our body is energy sensitive to a heat treatment. We see how our body is sensitive. We saw how our body is sensitive to what we eat. And all of this put together brings us to a physiological balance, influences our metabolism. And I'm not going to go into how, when, or what, because many of you could probably teach me. It goes into how a cell works, cellular function. And when we were talking with the first presentation about mitochondria, basic for cell functioning. And if that doesn't function, the cell doesn't function, our body doesn't function, our organs don't function. And then, of course, we have the emotional part. And all of this can either give nutrition or can drain our body. The biochemical, physiological, and psychological properties of essential oils, they're really vast and complementary to our body needs. The secondary metabolites, which are the constituents of essential oils, travel to the area of the dysfunction, or the dis-ease. The body is not at ease with what is going on, in the attempt to rebalance the body. This is exactly what it does. So it's much different than trying to manipulate a pathway with a synthetic compound or to suppress any type of symptom. Life force energy, or chi, ki, prana, and whatever we want to add to, depends on environment, food, water, minerals, and essential oils. The food, water, and minerals, this is where we have gone long past out of nature's laws, because we have a lot of impurities, and I'm not going to go through what impurities are in the food, because all you have to do is look at the labels, and all you have to do is be part of anything that has to do with nutrition. Pollutants, air, water, mind, soul, non-natural development. Well, all we have to do is think of how a lot of the food is cultivated. intensive cultivations, forced cultivations, and so on. A lot of insufficiencies. Why? Because we've engineered some of our food and we've taken away things. Just for example, think about the engineering of many vegetables where the digestive enzymes have been taken away. And that has been done way back in the 1960s to allow the vegetables to stay on the market shelf for a longer period of time. And then the adulterations, OGMs, or whatever you want to put in there. We cannot therefore directly heal, but what we can do is we can help our body to heal itself. And this is where essential oils in my field are very essential. Sickness, in many times, is the communication of our body that is trying to tell me that it's at disease, and at the same time, it's trying to restore the health and harmony process. Even if a person's cells are relatively young, their biological age reflects how their body responds to the passage of time. As organs renew their cells, the organs still age due to the changes in the replicating cells, whereas we're talking about mutations. Now, mutations aren't bad or good. Mutations can be constructive or destructive. And as cells replicate, the DNA continually divides and copies. And over time, and over the accumulation of toxins, and over the accumulations of disharmonies, mistakes in these divisions are made. So this is what we're looking at. Now, when we go one step further, as you see, the impurities and all the rest lead to aging factors or disease. This is where the essential oils come in, because it can help, they help the body, and we're going to see how. I'm just going to bring some examples, how it goes from disease to ease. It goes from disharmony to harmony. It goes from unbalance to balance. We also have to think that, you know, it's not only a physical problem, but it's an emotional problem. In Chinese medicine, we call it Shen. It's the spirit. And it has to do with living certain principles, which many times we have lost. Faith and gratitude. Or we've gone away from meditation. Now, meditation, I don't intend just sitting there and listening to the Om or long time meditation. Meditation, the concentration on what we do, what we are doing and why we are doing it. That's a meditation. We don't have time to listen to certain types of music. We've gone far away from harmonious music, which is very important, and so on. If I am to look how we have altered all of this, and I look at the stress that this brings on, and I look at the non-possibility of living a natural life, therefore following natural rhythms, so we give ourselves only time deficiencies, we don't have enough time to restore our body, and the loss of connection and the loss of respect, this is going to lead again to aging factors and disharmony. And again, we can see on a scientific basis how essential oils work on these factors to help us bring back the energy and the Shen and the spirits. When we live by natural laws, energy, life force, energy, and emotional force, we nourish ourselves. When we live by the human law, and human law, all we have to do is think of how we work. We don't have time to follow anything. We don't even have time to get up in the morning and look outside and see if there's a beautiful sunrise or if it's a beautiful day of rain. But we don't follow the energy, and we don't get life force. We don't follow the energy of emotional force. And there is little or no nourishment. Now, nourishment is not only all of the 92 elements that Dr. Parvin told us. Nourishment is also the life force that allows our body to do its biochemical alchemy every single day. Now, let's talk about the science, because I'm trying to go through this a little bit fast, so I have a little bit more time on the science part, because till we talk about the energetical part, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and we can talk about it a lot. But like I said in the beginning, we had a little chat before we started. I want to help people understand and give them the right information. So when we talk about science, growing old and getting old are two different things, and Dr. Parvin went through that already, and it's very important to understand the difference. Let's look at ourselves. Am I growing old or am I getting old? And then we'll start understanding a lot better. The first thing that is very, very important to understand, when we extract an essential oil, we do not extract proteins, vitamins, minerals, hormones, or any heavy molecules, as far as we extract correctly. We extract what are called secondary metabolites. Now, the secondary metabolite is not something very abstract. It was the evolution in the plant world that nature made to reach a certain degree of efficiency. And what nature did was underwent through the evolutionary periods to adapt to the new atmospheres, the new surroundings, the new environments for the plants, an intense molecular remodeling. And this is how nature renews remedies, renews our possibility through plants, for example, to remain healthy and not to get old, but to grow old. The intricate and intense ways in which secondary metabolites are an integral part of the whole symphony of life make their actions fundamentally different from those of synthetic medicines. And these secondary metabolites target three main areas. And this is evidenced by scientific research. The proteins, protein structures. And proteins are not only muscles. Think of all the proteins in the biochemical reactions of our physiology. The DNA and RNA structures. And we'll see that maybe it's not exactly the DNA, RNA, but it's the gene expression. The biological membranes of our body and of, for example, viruses, fungi, bacteria. Yeah. Secondary metabolites were created by nature as a defensive strategy for the plants, and wrote within these secondary metabolites the possibility of molecular targeting. The plants needed to be able to defend themselves against a wide variety of attackers. be it a physical attacker or be it an environmental attacker. This requires a broad spectrum of activity because a substance that might be able to help a plant for another plant can hinder it. And therefore, the plants had to adapt to a strategy that be universally effective. This is why nature developed the possibility of the plants to produce these secondary metabolites that are able to modify functional proteins and therefore interact essentially with receptors and enzymes. Now, this is important for us because this is exactly what the essential oil does when it gets into our body. What happens is it becomes a highly effective deterrent, since proteins performing the functions of receptors and enzymes are the main players in practically all cellular processes. Think about that. So that's exactly what an essential oil does. Essential oils can work in a physiological way, or in a psychological way, or emotional way. But they all work at a cellular level. Substances with certain structural proteins can directly traverse or go through the cell membranes and move into the cell without being limited by the cell's transport machinery in a process known as passive diffusion. Why? Because they're lipophilic. Think of what the cell membranes are made of. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, alcohol, and some drugs, anesthetics, and essential oils are some of the few substances capable of moving this way. Essential oils are natural. Essential oils were forged to protect. The two features that allow the essential oils to use the passive diffusion is because they're liposoluble and they are lower than 500 Daltons in molecular size. Now, let's remember that the membrane is composed of lipids, and because essential oils are lipid soluble and small, they can pass. They can pass the cells of the nervous systems, and they can pass into the receptors of the endocrine system, and therefore they influence many, many different areas and many, many different physiological systems. And then I'll be talking about the properties, and we'll even understand more. Essential oils can influence the brain by passing through the blood, from the bloodstream into the brain. They can pass through the blood barrier, especially the terpenes and the sesquiterpenes, which are the main constituents, the main chemical families of essential oils. The barrier only allows the passage of certain compounds that are crucial to the brain function. Call them glucose, certain amino acids, for example. Many researchers have demonstrated that sesquiterpenes and terpenes cross directly the blood-brain barrier. And therefore, we can start understanding not only the physiological effect on detoxifying the cells of the brain, but we can also start understanding how part of the emotional part is due to the contact with the limbic system, and we'll talk about that later when we talk about emotions, and the physical part. But just to give you an idea exactly, the transdermal permeation is a very complex activity. And Williams and Barry showed that the principal mode of action of tested cyclic terpenes, therefore constituents of essential oils, call them alpha-pinene, alpha-terpineol, carvinol, 1,8-cineol, and others, is based on their interaction with intercellular stratum corneum lipids. So as you see, we're starting to talk about the mechanisms. And this is important because the outside-in process is based on topical application. I'm not getting into the oral application of essential oils because you must know the essential oil is much deeper, and it could be a little bit tricky. But the intracellular route is where molecules pass directly into the cornocytes and continue inward, passing into and out of the cornocytes along the way. Whereas in the intracellular route, molecules are penetrating into the layers of the skin through the tiny spaces. Okay? And at this point, they just pass through. And they can be absorbed also by the bloodstream. There's also a shunt route. Now, the shunt route is a very clever bypass system in which the molecules do not directly pass through the corneocytes or the spaces in between them. Instead, they pass through the structures that originate in the dermis and then span the entire height of the epidermis. Now, this gives us an idea of how important, when we talk about topical diffusion of essential oils, how important it is. The shunt route, for example, includes the sweat glands, sebaceous glands, hair follicles. And the essential oils can alter the keratin-rich epidermical layers of these structures and allow a significant absorption of the molecules of the secondary metabolites. So we have to understand that when we are using essential oils and we talk about dermal absorption, there are various ways. And this allows us to start understanding how the essential oils also get to a liver, a pancreas, an intestine, to the brain, and so on. Let's understand also that it's very important to realize that whatever gets on our skin could eventually get into our body. But any essential oil that is put on our skin inevitably gets into our body. Essential oils an outside-in support. Now, one of the main problems, and I'm really just touching a couple of topics, one of the main problems in cellular health has a lot to do with the oxidative stress. And we all know what that is. And I'm not going to talk about free radicals because we know that the body has a very strong defense system that can take care of these free radicals. But up to a certain point. If we have an army of 20 people and we have to defend our house, we can defend up to a certain amount, a certain number of people. But what happens if the army has to defend from 1,000 invaders that are camping in my grounds? Free radicals, toxins in our body that our body cannot eliminate anymore because we have saturated the entire process. And that is what we know as oxidative stress. At this point, it's very important to be able to give our body an external supply of antioxidants. Now, essential oils are are fundamentally all antioxidant factors. There are some that are more, some that are less due to the chemical compositions. Essential oils are also not only antioxidants, but also able to go and do a scavenger activity against the free radicals. And therefore, we're starting to see the importance of this type of treatment with problems such as brain dysfunctions due to what? An accumulation of free radicals that do not allow cells to function correctly. Cancer, heart diseases, immune system decline. There is increasing evidence in scientific reports that suggests that these diseases, therefore, the body is not at ease and it has lost a harmonious way of expressing itself, may result from cellular damage caused by the free radicals. So this is one of the reasons why essential oils come in and give a great support. For example, thyme, clove, basil, thanks to the presence of various types of molecules, because these molecules can go and target and eliminate. And when I say the essential oil eliminates, I mean the molecules, these secondary metabolites, free receptor sites that allow our body to start reacting better, and we start eliminating more. So it's very important to understand this process, because this is why essential oils in the outside in process are fundamental. When we start talking about anti-inflammatory, and this is just one molecule, you'll find it in Salvia rosmarinus, rosemary, or Salvia officinalis, just two of the main plants that have the Borneol terpenoid molecule as one of its main constituents. Now, research has demonstrated, because one of my things is, well, okay, this is really nice and wonderful and jolly, but what does it really do in our body? I mean, what does Borneol, once it gets into our body and has been metabolized by our body, creating a whole reaction, biochemical reaction, what does it do? Well, it suppresses the pro-inflammatory cytokines, interleukin, IL, I-beta, 1-beta, and IL-6. And it also suppresses the mRNA expression and acts as bioactive material in the cellular signal transduction system. This is the research done by Park and others in 2003. It also has a great antibacterial activity and inhibitory effects on gram-positive and gram-negative. It has a very strong antioxidant activity by reducing the intracellular ROS generation and by attenuating the elevation of nitric acid. I'm not going to say what this does because we all know about it. It also works on the receptors of the altered GABAergic functioning, producing and the GABAergic functioning, when it doesn't work, it produces a hyper-excitable neural network. And therefore, this is one of the reasons why when we see Borneol, they say it helps with problems with epileptic seizures. This is what it does. And this is just one. We're talking the science, and we are nurturing our desire to understand, but let's not forget the art. When we talk about melaleuca, tea tree oil, the terpenol 4 oil was able to suppress production of, and this is in vitro, but they've also started to see it in vivo, TNF alpha and IL-1 beta, as well as other factors. Now, if we think of these two important pro-inflammatory cytokines and how much relevance they have, how much importance they have on the inflammatory disorders, we should ask ourselves, why don't we use melaleuca more frequently on a topical basis? The major source of TNF-alpha is the cell of monocytes and macrophage lineage through the T lymphocytes. We all know that, no? And what's important is that if the IL-1 beta is produced by the monocytes, the macrophage, fibroblasts, and endothelial cells, this is why we start to see that melaleuca can relax and restore cellular function, for example, in fibroblasts, and help healing systems in our body. Another small example, 6 years later from this research, in 2006, the research reported the capability of the essential oils connected to Melaleuca alternifolia in the suppressing of IL-2 pro-inflammatory cytokines and stimulating the secretion of anti-inflammatory IL-4 and IL-10 cytokines in human peripheral blood mononuclear cells. So the science is giving us a major understanding on why we should really start looking into all of this, and why I have decided, and I've been using the outside-in method in my practice for over 25 years with very, very interesting results. This is just to show you another part. Geraniol is composed of neural and citral. Okay, excuse me, geraniol and nerol compose the citral. Citral is one of the main molecules found, for example, in lemongrass. Now, many people don't understand that lemongrass, due to the fact that it does suppress the IL-1B and IL-6, has the possibility of helping our body detox very quickly, and so on. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but what I do want you to understand is when we talk about molecular targeting, essential oils work on, for example, molecular targeting in all cells on the membranes. Now, one of the most outstanding qualities of the nerve and sensory cells is their ability to generate and conduct electrical signals. We all know that. And this is the result of the membrane's ability to separate charges and the ability of specific membrane proteins. And when I said one of the target areas were proteins, ion pumps, to affect controlled changes of conductivity. Many effects of essential oil molecules are many of the effects, of the essential oil molecules are a consequence to their ability to modify this electrical signal. They do so by either inserting themselves into the membrane, or they can do it by changing the membrane function by attaching themselves to the lipophilic areas of the membrane. Or there's a third process where they can do it just through the passage and internally changing determined areas, for example, mitochondria, imbalances within the cell. Now, this leads to understanding why, when we use essential oils and we get responses from nerves and tissues, be it fibroblasts or be it skin or be it the tissues of our organs, we start to understand what the essential oil is doing in the cell, because it is acting at a cellular level. Now, this is one of the fundamental points why essential oils, in my opinion, should be part of the anti-aging processes that we want to enhance. Another target is the DNA, RNA, and gene expression. And this is taken from this wonderful book, and I actually copied the picture because secondary metabolites modify not necessarily the DNA, but the gene expression. What happens is the genes encode proteins, and protein dictate the cell functions. Therefore, thousands of genes expressed in a particular cell determine what the cell can do. Moreover, each step in the flow of information from DNA to RNA to protein provides the cell with a potential control point for self-regulating its functions by adjusting the amount and type of proteins. Now, we can go deeper into this, but I don't want to take too much time because I know we're sort of short. But let's remember that when lipophilic essential oil molecules insert themselves into the lipophilic area of the proteins, they change its conformation. Okay? And the active center of the enzyme is modified. There's a modification. And this makes the enzyme less effective or more or fully effective. And this is why we say that essential oils modulate automatically thanks to nature's law, because it looks for the best balancing within our system of any type of metabolism. So, to recap, selective interaction with specific molecular targets, such as neuro or hormone receptors, disturbance of the three-dimensional structure of the proteins, covalent bonding of DNA and RNA, modifying gene expression. And unfortunately, in many times when we read in books, they say that it modifies the DNA or RNA. Well, no, not really. It modifies the gene expression, which is very, very important, as you can well understand. It also does changing in the membrane permeability, and therefore the function of membrane proteins. This is what the essential oils do. Now, we have to understand that once the metabolites, the secondary metabolites, go into our body, they undergo biochemical processes, okay? The immediate entrance, there's a first mechanism of interaction of the secondary metabolite with an active site of a protein, okay? And this is a selective and specific interaction. But as the molecule is metabolized, they become non-selective. So what happens is, instead of focusing in one area, they open up. And therefore, we have more response. And this was taken directly from, like I said, this fabulous book. If you really want to understand more and go into in detail what I have been talking about. It's the healing intelligence of essential oils of Kurt Schauburn. I found it eye-opening, and it gave me the way to look at even research in a different perspective and understand more about how we go from biology to aromatherapy. Okay. Now, we have to remember when Dr. Pavan talked about the liver being so important, the liver is a fundamental, I would say, detoxification center, elaboration center of our body. But the liver is also one of those organs that suffers from emotional stress more than any other. Why? Because fear and anger can actually stop the liver function. And we have to remember that, because it's not only a foreign substance that can stop the liver action. And the liver action is very, very important. Liver detoxification has the highest impact for aromatherapy. Not only due to essential oil, the fact that essential oils trigger their own biotransformation, because when that happens and the essential oils are within the liver, there is an increased production of phase 1 and phase 2 processes that allow the detoxification of the liver. So this is another whole story that we could get into and talk about for maybe even an hour or more. But let's remember the emotional part. And like I said, I'm going to just take the liver. In traditional Chinese medicine, fear, which is in the water and kidney area, give nutrition. The water gives nutrition to the wood, which contains the liver and I'm starting to get tired, excuse me, the liver and the bile Chiola-6th. So what happens is, if we live in an environment of fear and anger, we are going to have a lot more problems on our hepatic metabolism, involving a higher degree of aging, because we cannot detox our body. This is just a little thought. What have we been living for the last 2.5 to 3 years? Fear and anger.
Dr. Steve, sorry to interrupt.
I'm finished. It's my last slide. When we talk about essential oils, let's also remember that breathing the essential oils activates all this. And that is why also topically, when we breathe in, we have a double function. So coming back to the beginning, essential oils represent the evolution, renewal, regeneration, and adaptation necessary to maintain harmony and foster the growing old. And therefore, in many different ways, allow our body to contrast the aging factors. Thank you all very much.